Okay, good evening everybody. Welcome to Allilon Unplugged number 7. I've been trying to think about a way of planning how to talk to you guys this evening in regards to what the goal is of this evening. But there's a number one goal. Before I carry on, I just want to double check to make sure this is live so we don't have the same issues we did. Okay, good. We're locked and loaded. So, last week was incredible. We were so lucky we had Chris with us. We had an amazing turnout. Chris is probably one of the most inspirational people that you can meet. He speaks from his heart and you genuinely feel the connection. Well, tonight we're going to be focused on the Allilon team, and I would love for you guys to get to know the Allilon team tonight. So if you have any questions, please do ask. The more questions you have, they could be personal to a certain degree. Obviously they can be technical and about hair. It's quite exciting tonight because we're going to be showing a little bit of colour, and I'm going to be talking more about that later on. So we're going to crack on straight away. Please feel free to ask questions tonight, up close and personal with the Allilon team, okay? So I'm going to introduce you first of all to Kate. For those of you who've never met Kate before, this is Kate.
Hello everyone.
So Kate, why don't you tell everyone what you're going to do tonight, and the floor is yours.
Okay, so I haven't actually planned Storm's haircut exactly at the moment, so I've just been spending some time combing it through. But her previous haircut, I'll tell you a little bit about that. You can see she's got a little fringe, I'll just spin the chair around. Which, when Storm's hair was dry and she came in, I actually really liked the fringe, so I'm going to keep that today. Can't do much about it to change it, it's so short anyway. So what I like to do is, because Storm's hair is really long, as you can see, I want to get the fringe done first. And Storm's previous haircut for the internal shape is shorter internally, vertically, and longer externally. Horizontally, it's shorter at the front, getting longer towards the back. So as I'm working, I'm going to keep a similar vertical and horizontal shape, because we want to keep a nice little bit of shape and softness around the front, but get the length longer towards the back. As you can see, it's really long at the moment. Obviously she's got the beautiful curls, so you'll see that at the end. I'm going to do the internal shape first and then the external shape. And the reason why I want to do the internal shape first is because I like to, when Storm come in, the ends are quite soft and I want to keep that. So the internal shape will be done first, which means the external shape will follow the shape of the hairline. And then at the end I'll just refine it just briefly so the ends stay a little bit softer for her, so it's not so heavy on the external shape. So I'm just going to start with the fringe. Sorry, I wasn't quite prepared.
No problem, it's cool. What we'll do, we'll move on to Jonathan and we'll come back to you in regards to what you're doing now, yeah?
I really need you first.
Yeah.
Okay, let's wait for what's Madeline.
Sorry.
Perfect. So guys, this is Madeline.
Hiya, hello.
Madeline is our colour director for those of you who've never met her before. And Madeline, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Johnny. So here I have the gorgeous Melody just underneath here. Don't know if you guys recognise her from last week. I decided I wanted to place a little bit of colour on Melody's hair, just like Christopher had been talking about last week. I wanted to show you a complete look. And what we did, we had a little look at some photographs of Christopher's previous work, Melody and I together. So I've decided to choose a highlighting technique. So through the area of length, through the top, I'm doing some woven highlights. And then as you can see through the sides, just in the interest of time, processing time, etc., I've just combed on some very, very, very small pieces, freehand highlights through there, just to give a little bit of lightness, like she's been on holiday, give it a real lift. The colours that I'm using, Andy, I've set them up here for you. So we have a high lift, which in the Davines range is called an extra lift tint. This is a 12.21, so this is a high lift or an extra lift with a violet and ash tone to it. I'm using that with the 40 volume today to give a real nice sun-kissed sort of look through there. And then just to add a little bit of depth on top of Melody's gorgeous natural base, we have a 911. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit nervous, so I'm shaking. Sorry, so we have a double ash and a level 9 there. Just so as we lift it, it's going to give a little bit of depth. It's not going to blow out the tone too much, and we've got a really nice, interesting texture in there. Christopher was talking a lot about the texture, and as he was moving it last week and I was watching, I really loved the fact that as he was playing with it, we got these lighter pieces where Melody had been on holiday. So I'm sort of playing with that a little bit. I'm going to accentuate that. So I'm just going to carry on. If you could just put your head down a little bit for me, Melody. As you can see, I've worked in foils all the way through here. I'm working with a space about 5mm apart. I'm weaving each section, and what I'm doing to keep my continuity of my weave is I'm keeping my comb flat against the scalp, and I'm also using my mind to count each single weave. So I started with a smaller section down here with 7 weaves, and as I started to go up here, I'm using about 10. You can also see that I'm just folding my foil to the shape and size of my section, not larger and not any smaller than where my last weave is. I've dropped out a little bit here, and I'm going to place another foil next to it, just because that was too wide. I don't want to get any drag on there. And then as I start working towards here, it's smaller towards this edge of the section as well. So I'm going to keep folding my foils to the shape and size of my section. Thank you.
So it's quite exciting tonight because we've got some colour which you haven't had before. And like I said before, we're going to be discussing that in a lot more detail and what's going to be coming with Allilon in the foreseen future. So the next talented Allilon educator is Mr. Jonathan. Mr. Jonathan.
Hi everyone, welcome. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Special Tuesday evening with all of us.
Pancake day.
Pancake day.
That's why it's special.
As Kate says, I'm missing my pancakes. Hope you're enjoying yours at home. So basically what I've just done here is I've pre-cut while Kate and Madeline were chatting away. Now, my fixed analysis was I've got quite a strong growth pattern in here. Head shape is quite nice. Dips in just a little bit where the occipital bone is, so I've started with a section which is more towards the vertical diagonal, because then that way I control more of my vertical shape. So my vertical shape is triangular. And then what I've done is I've actually moved slightly higher up the head, but slightly further wider with my section. That way then it's helping me to actually get to more of a horizontal diagonal, which is then going to control more of my horizontal shape. My horizontal shape throughout from front to back is going to be completely triangular. So if you think about lengths, and I was discussing this with Kate the other day, and she actually said to me that she's been teaching recently by explaining sort of lengths. We visualise shape as in round, square, triangular, but sometimes that can be a little bit confusing. So if you imagine, if my shape is going to start at a certain length on the horizontal, and it's actually going to become longer, ever so slightly all the way round to the front, that would be regarded as more of a triangular horizontal shape, okay? And the same with the vertical. If you imagine the vertical at the external shape being very, very short, working into a longer length towards the crown. So again, vertically triangular. I've actually worked 7 sections on this side, on the left-hand side. Now what I'm going to do for balance, head down for me, and slightly a little bit over to the left-hand side to help me with my body posture. I'm going to come in from, again, the vertical diagonal. I'm going to be using elevation. So I'm grooming the hair from underneath. My cutting line is going to be triangular, again shorter externally, longer internally. My cutting by numbers has to get slightly longer in each section. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take 1, I'm going to use my elevation to comb the hair out from the base, and then I'm going to cut the hair triangular, shorter externally, longer internally. Then 2 is slightly going to move just a fraction further back to section number 1. Again, cutting the hair shorter externally to longer internally. Now, why do I count my section? I count my section, so then I'm going to do 12, don't know where I got that number from, I'm going to do 7 from here to the top of the ear. I have the guide from the left-hand side, so each time I pick the hair up, look, I can make sure that I'm actually meeting the hair in the middle. Now, I choose to do one side first and one side second because of my body posture. I find it quite difficult to do one side and then one side and one side, which is not a problem with that, as Johnny, I think, explained earlier in the videos, I think maybe in video number 2, I think it was. So yeah, I'm going to now work, again, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, all the way up to just below the crown and the top of the ear, okay?
Thank you, John.
No problem.
So, last but by no means least, my best friend and my business partner Mr. Pedramchenko, everybody.
Hello everyone. The last 6 sessions, I was sitting on my couch at home, having a cup of tea, watching my best mate go for it, and now he's dragged me into this one. So it's great to be here. I'm really loving, all of the things that we've seen so far. Christopher, last week, I think blew us away. Johnny was speaking to me afterwards the next day, and he just said to me, what did you get from it? And I said, the main thing for me was his enthusiasm and his love of hair. And I think sometimes, I know me personally, I love what I do, but I think sometimes it's hard to communicate that. And I think he was just incredible at doing that. And it makes sense why he has such a legacy. I felt motivated afterwards. I felt like I wanted to cut some hair, and I think, technical excellence and education is, fantastic, but to motivate people, I think was incredible to witness, what he did in the 60s and 70s. He's still in him. Me and Jonathan were saying earlier, how old is he, Jonathan? 72? 74. And he's got that enthusiasm for his craft still, and it's infectious, So obviously what Johnny's been trying to do, for you guys with the first 6 is give you a nice cross section of work, and I think he's done an amazing job, to kind of share with you guys. So this is Millie, and what I want to do with Millie's hair, we just literally met 10 minutes ago. And she's got beautiful hair. It's actually Sam's model, one of our Allilon educators. He's actually hurt his back. He was meant to be joining us today, but he hurt his back a few days ago. But you'll get to see him again, I'm sure. And with Millie's hair, we spoke quickly downstairs regarding her likes, what she's into, and she wants something to move. She wants something soft. She doesn't mind seeing a stronger external line, but she would prefer some more movement and for the hair to kind of have a little bit more energy. So straight away that led me on to thinking about doing something more kind of shorter internally to kind of give her that movement. When I look at her hair type, there is flags that raise up on density, so I have to consider how much weight and length that I'm going to leave around the side areas. So already as I'm starting in the back and I'm choosing my vertical shape, I am considering this choice, how it's going to affect what happens here. And then also using over direction to compensate as well. So Jonathan was talking and Kate were both talking in incredible language, which I think was really evident when they were both communicating what they were doing. So for me, I want to kind of work with a vertical section. My cutting line is slightly triangular, like Jonathan was saying, so shorter towards the exterior, longer towards the interior. And as I work through, section 2 is being combed to section 1, section 3 is being combed to section 2, and so on. I would say my over direction increases as I get behind the ear, so probably section 5 is probably coming back to section 3. Yeah, just to increase that over direction, just to maintain a little bit more weight, because this hairline's changing. From this point here up, that's the danger zone. So I have to bear that in mind. I could increase my over direction, or another thing I could do is actually change the angle of my cutting line. The third thing I can do is potentially disconnect and change the guide, to compensate depending on density and hairlines. So I've just popped that in that side. So if I check horizontally, let's see the shape that I've created. I just pop the head back, as I work through, so it's just slightly getting longer to behind the ear, and I'm just going to repeat that on the other side.
Sounds good. Okay, so we've got questions coming through now, guys. First of all, thank you for asking questions, guys. Much appreciated, and it makes the whole thing run really smooth, and we really want to try and share with you as much as we can. If I can bring the camera over to Mrs. Madeline Murphy. Madeline, we've got a colour question, but before we go through the colour question, I know you want to show the mechanics of what you're doing.
Please, I went a bit faster than I expected, sorry. So what I've done for you guys here is I've just left this tiny little section on the top there. You can see it's really, really fine. Sorry, Andy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to split that into two, because I've done really soft highlights through Melody's hair here, and I just want to make sure that none of that looks chunky or false or misplaced. I want it to look like she's been on holiday, essentially. So the idea with the weaves is that I keep my comb super flat. Oh, my section's not tidy though. I'm trying not to touch the colour underneath as well. So I keep my comb really nice and flat, and that means I can see exactly where my comb is going in and how much hair I'm picking up. This is right on the crown area here, so I'm actually going to do 2 in my extra lift, in my level 12, because that's exactly where the sun would sit. If she was sitting in Sardinia somewhere on a beach reading her book, then that's exactly where she would have a lighter area. I'm just going to fold that. And what I was talking about earlier, guys, is when you come to fold your foil, put your fold in the bottom, because that gives us not only a handle to take them out, but it will help secure your foil. And then to the shape and size of your section. That means if you do decide to put any foils around here, they're not in the way, and it also means they're nice and firm. I can rinse all this underneath area without disturbing these foils on top. And if I show you on here, I'm going to use the top of my trolley, and I'm just going to explain to you what I mean about keeping the comb flat. So as hairdressers, we always want to get our highlights really, really nice and close to the root. So if we use our comb really nice and flat like I'm talking about, we get weaves like this. So we can get our foil right up to the edge of this hair here and ensure that our highlights are going right from the root. If I use my comb in a pointed action, can you see it? So if I do this with my comb instead of this, I'm going to end up with uneven, almost triangular sections like this. So if you imagine the distance of your foil from the bottom, getting that really close to the root, isn't going to happen in the same way as if you have nice, thin, flat weaves. Johnny, did you say you had a question?
That's a really clever tip.
Thank you.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
I'm impressed with that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we've got a colour question here. The colour question is from Nicola Halloway. She says, hi everyone. Is there a reason I can't get 9/11 yet in my salon in I'm assuming it's NUUK. In NUUK. I'm assuming she means...
We've only just got it in, so this is the first tube we have in the salon.
Okay.
So I thought it'd be quite exciting to show all those Davines customers out there that are using Vibrochrome, the tone that we create from this. So maybe just have a look on your order form or speak to your distributor and just check that that's in stock now. So we now have the 9.11, the 4.18 and 3.81, if I got those numbers the right way around. So we have our 0.8s within the Davines range and our double ones as well, so we get that strong ash in there.
So you obviously, as a company, we're very, very close to Davines.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that and explain maybe the different colour ranges and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, of course. So within Davines, Davines is a colour house. So yes, they sell products, shampoos and conditioners, but what their main focus now is their colour ranges. So we have the new range Vibrochrome, which has a brand new technology inside it. I don't have all the time right now, but like Johnny said, in the future we'll be doing a few more of these colour lives. So I will do a day when we explain a little bit more about the technology behind that. We also have an ammonia-free range, which is permanent, called a new colour. That has a whole range of natural nuances, but then also has a pure colour, which you can see in my hair today. So you can get those really vibrant fashion colours. All the colours that we use for our collections with Allilon are all Davines, so the bright colours you see are those pure colours. We then have a 98% naturally derived colour, which is called finest pigment. It uses plant cellulose and natural dyes to colour the hair. Lasts 8 to 10 shampoos. And then we also have an Alchemics range, which is a coloured shampoo and conditioner range that you can use to tone the hair. So anything from a silver to a red, a copper, a sand. Really fantastic. There is a Davines app, guys, if you want to have a little bit more information about anything I'm talking about. But like Johnny said, we are going to be doing some more very exciting colour lives, so I hope to see you there.
So the first Tuesday of every month, we're going to be having an Allilon Colour Unplugged.
We are indeed.
So for those colourists out there, feel free to get ready to tune in. Okay, John, can we give a little debrief on what you're doing now? I can see this is looking quite...
Okay, where are you going?
clean,
You going there?
quite
Yeah.
graphic.
Alright, cool. So, I worked to behind the ear, so both sides, 7 sections over the top of the ear. When I was training, one of the hardest things that I found was to do a fluid shape from the back to the front, which was triangular vertically and triangular horizontally. That was what I found really, really hard. And Johnny will back me up on that. I used to get problems with the ears, I used to have problems with my elevation, I used to have problems with my over direction, when to elevate, when not to elevate. So, basically, once I got to my 7th section, I then combed all the hair backwards from the front hairline to the centre back. Curved section, around about this thick, so from the hairline, quite a nice amount of hair, which actually would give me a fluid line all the way through from the cheekbone to the hairline. Okay? I comb the hair down with no elevation and put my external shape in. I've done that for 2 sections. Now, why is the reason I've done that? Because that tells me where the external shape is going to sit. And that way then, when I pick this hair up here, and I go back to my elevation, what happens is I actually see the external shape underneath move away. So if I pick the hair up from the underneath and lift that hair up, there's my external shape. Now, I don't want to cut my internal shape using my external shape as my guide, because if I did, what would happen was I would round the whole shape off and I would lose the front hairline, so I'd have a big hole where the hairline sits. So what I then do is I actually stand a bit further back. I work towards, again, picking up the hair from my internal shape, which is here. There's part of my external shape. My ear is going to be here, look. And I know that if I carry my internal shape on, I won't create a hole over the top of the ear. So that was how I learned how to basically control the weight. So I'm going to pick the hair up. I'm going to go back to imagining what my elevation was on around about section 4. And now I'm going to just basically continue that shape, making sure that I'm using enough over direction, the right elevation, and connecting the shape through. That helps to give me a nice fluid shape all the way through to the front. Now, if I don't want to keep as much length and weight, I've gone past the point of where the ear is now, so I could start to now move my body. Because all that's going to happen is this is the excess length. Watch what happens in a minute. The excess length falls over the top of my external shape, and then what that does is it doesn't make me have a hole over the top of the ear. Okay? So now I'm going to continue my sections all the way up to the top, so like a horizontal diagonal. I'm using Alex to help me. You can do that as well in your salons, which I think is really nice, because what's going to happen then is he's going to be watching, of course, so he's going to be learning. And then when it helps him on his training days and towards the future of the company, which is so important for us, then it's a real big benefit. So using a nice amount of elevation now, and really imagining what my vertical shape is doing. Your section number 1, which was vertical diagonal, that is where I imagine my vertical shape running throughout the whole shape. I'm not actually changing my elevation. I'm not actually going from this amount of elevation to this amount of elevation to this amount of elevation. I'm not doing that. What I'm doing is I'm actually going to continue with the same elevation, so the same vertical shape, all the way from the back down to the front. Once I've achieved that, I'm going to comb the hair down and just cut my external shape in. Okay? So I'm going to crack on with that.
Brilliant. Just before I move on, John.
Yes, sir.
There's one question from somebody called Kay Smith-Holmes, and it's related to what you were discussing before.
Okay.
Just in regards to the graduation that you were doing.
Yes.
It says, hi all. Why is the sections getting longer each time? What effect does that give?
Why is the sections getting longer, as in from front to back?
The graduate, this is one of the first questions that was being asked.
Okay.
It was back when you were graduating the hair through the back.
Yes.
And you talked about the section changing.
Oh, the width of the section. Okay, cool.
The length of the section.
Perfect, alright. So basically, if you imagine like a clock, as it pivots, it moves from the centre axis. Now, if I was to do that with my sections, I would get round to horizontal really, really quickly. And I wouldn't work my way up the top of the head. So what I have to do is, because I'm actually covering more ground on the outside of the shape, because the section has to be a bit wider in order for me to get round to horizontal so quickly, I basically move up a little bit and out on the outside, I actually widen the section. Now you have to be careful, because obviously that can affect your over direction and your elevation, but if I didn't widen the section and I kept the section the same size, what would happen was I would actually just work methodically parallel all the way through the shape. So one thing has to change, the outside. If the outside changes and gets wider, what will happen is I will actually move to horizontal, and I will get to that horizontal diagonal eventually. I hope that answers your question. If not, I will try and answer it a different way.
Thank you. So Miss Hussey, while the guys have been talking,
Yep.
what have you been up to? How far have you got in your haircut?
Okay, so I'll show you what I did at the front. So I'm using vertical sections now, but originally I started on a slight diagonal. And the reason why was because if you look at Storm's hairline, just turn it to the side, it's on more of a diagonal shape. So I want my section to mirror the hairline, so that when I'm putting my first section in, which becomes my guide, I've got a strong enough guide. Now you can see on Storm's hair around the sideburn area, it becomes very like low density and there's a little bit of breakage. So when I took a thinnish diagonal section originally, I didn't have a very strong guide. So my first section was actually quite wide. Then I combed the hair straight out from the base and I cut shorter internally to longer externally, which is what Storm already had as her previous haircut. And because I quite like the shape, I wanted to keep it the same. My next section, obviously I'm going to control my vertical shape from the centre part and down to the hairline. So I'm using vertical sections to help me control the lengths in that area the easiest way possible for me. So I've pivoted my sections once I've got a strong enough guide in my first two sections, and then pivoted them to more horizontal. So by my fourth section, I was above the ear, and my section was completely vertical. All the time, I'm combing section 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. So that new section is combed out from its base and cut shorter internally to longer externally. So the shape, when I cross-check it in the opposite direction, using sections in the opposite direction, you'll see that it's mirroring the shape of Storm's head, because I've combed every section out from its base, so it's going to follow the shape of her head, so a rounder shape so far. Now every time I've cut a section, I've been assessing it, so I've been visually looking in the mirror. I think this is really important with curly hair, it's just something I like to do, to see the distribution of length and weight within the hair that I've cut so far. So I started to see that I wanted to create some more length towards the back, so that it's not as short as I've kept at the front here. So now when I got to section 4, I'm actually on section 8 now, on this side. I've done what Jonathan spoke about earlier. Originally I started working both sides at the same time, just to help me keep my balance. Now I've got to section 4, I'm just going to work one side all the way around to the centre back. So section 4 is where now I want to over-direct 5, 6, 7, 8, which is where I am at this point, forwards to section 4. So what I like to do, to make sure I'm over-directing it forwards to exactly the right section, is section off, section 1, 2 and 3. So I know that I'm going to over-direct that head forwards to section 4. Like I said, I'm already on section 8 on this side now. So when I pick the hair up, I'm going to have section 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8 in my hands, my fingers. So I just want to show you a little tip. When you're working with such a large amount of hair, you can break the section down. That's what I like to do, just to help me control the hair a lot easier and work cleanly. Break it down and just work the first part of the section.
So now as you move your body to the back and you're combing in a specific direction, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so like I said, because I want it to get longer towards the back, I'm now over-directing every section from section 4 to the centre back, forwards, so the length will become longer.
So by coming in from the back, you're encouraging that whole direction?
I can stand at the front, but for me it's easier to control my cutting line, the shape that I'm creating, shorter internally to longer externally, from standing like from the back. But you could stand at the front if you wanted to.
Cool. Thank you.
So then I'll just use a guide from the top zone of the section that I just took. Make sure Storm's head doesn't move too much. I'm using a lot of tension, so it's helping me control the hair a lot easier, and just following the same cutting line that I had on the previous sections. Take a little piece of hair away. And work all the way down to the hairline. Because I'm cutting the internal shape first, I'm making sure that I'm working all the way down to the very external shape. Sorry, Storm. She doesn't feel anything.
She's hardcore.
She's used to it. Just comb the hair through. Another little tip is when you're working with long hair, what I notice sometimes people do is they release the tension when they get to the top, so they'll be like this, and then they'll do that, and then they'll cut, which I find sometimes can affect the cleanliness of your cutting line. So just try and keep that tension. If it's too long for you, just lower the chair.
It's a good tip.
I'm quite tall, so I'll be able to see, can see the cutting line still. So yeah, I'm just going to carry on working around and just briefly talk to you about the sections now. Because I want them to remain vertical, I had to pivot my sections at the roundness of the head. Because if I carried on vertical, they'd obviously end up more towards the horizontal. So I just pivoted at the roundness of the head, which will remain with vertical sections as I get to the centre back. I'm going to come through to the other side, starting again, section 5, and everything's going to go forwards to section 4. So my shape horizontally will be triangular, shorter at the front, longer towards the back on both sides.
Thank you, Kate. So Pelly, while the guys have been talking and cutting, you've moved on and you've done quite a bit of your left-hand side.
Yes.
I've also got a question for you. So if you want to give you guys an update, and then I'll ask you a question.
Okay, sounds good. Alright guys, so when I left you, I was in this position. Alright, so I was here. I was taking a vertical section. I was cutting a triangular cutting line. Alright, so slightly longer internally. Alright, and I was using over direction to maintain a little bit more weight behind the ear. So as I work through, I'll just build in that little bit more length in this area. Okay, so after that, what I did is I started at the front. Alright, so I completely switched my technique, working from front to back instead of back to front. And I'll tell you why I've done that. If you look at the exterior, if you look at the external shape, you can't really see disconnection in there. You know, it looks like everything is part of the same haircut. Alright, so I took sections starting at the front, slightly diagonal, and I stood behind and I chose a length shorter internally, longer externally, all the way through. And each section I over-directed back to its previous. Alright, so just build in, if you imagine the horizontal shape would be slightly shorter here, getting slightly longer towards the crown. Alright, the vertical shape is shorter internally, longer externally. So just pushing that forward, just a fraction. You could push it all the way to the front, you know, but obviously then you'll get more of extreme horizontal shape. Just keep it going all the way through, and I just kept that same angle, working all the way through. So my question to you guys is, where is my disconnection? Alright, so I continued all the way through.
You're throwing a question to the audience now.
Yeah, continued all the way through.
Behind the ear?
Behind the ear, let's have a look. Alright, so like I said, externally it doesn't look like there's any disconnection. Alright, so if I just take a section behind the ear here, you will see there's quite a large amount of disconnection just in this area. Alright, if I pick up in the same spot higher up, there isn't. There's just a slight corner because I pulled this hair back and I pulled that hair forward. So what I'm going to see is a slight corner in the middle. Obviously that depends on choice of length. If I chose a shorter length there, then that would have affected what happens here. If my direction changed, it would have affected what happens here. But I wanted a blend in this area, but below, I wanted to make sure that I had enough weight behind the ear for me to personalise that afterwards. All right, so it's just a little trick. So I literally stopped just before the back of the ear, and I connected everything else in here, yeah? But then I came through this way, all the way through, and just changed the angle of my cutting line. So naturally, the external lengths are disconnected, but the internal lengths are connected. So it's just a way, it's a little trick to avoid losing the density in that area.
Good little trick.
So I'm going to continue the same on the other side. So if you see, first section, it's all about, you know, the tricky part of starting in centre back, working to behind the ear, then starting at the front hairline and working to behind the ear, is obviously your choice of length. The decisions that you make here and the decisions that you make in the centre back. So let's have a look at what I'm going to do here. So I've got a little triangular bit of disconnection on the top. Millie's hair comes over this way. So if I want to, I could actually, the choice of length on this side could be shorter, because I've got the ability to cover this hair with this top length. I could just cut it symmetrically, same on both sides. If I was to cut it symmetrically, what I'd do is I'd comb the hair up, and before I take a section, before I cut the section, I'll just lift that, just there, you know, and that would give me an indication of choice of length that I chose on the other side. So I'm just using that as a reference. Obviously, I have to be mindful of my finger position. You know, if I'm parallel with the floor, or I've got an angle, obviously that will affect my external shape, my internal shape. So I'm focused on all of these things. So I might take it just a fraction shorter on this side, just because I've got the security of this length up here. Alright, but I could change the angle of the cutting line as well. You know, using the same section pattern, you can achieve, you know, as many techniques as you can think of. You know, so sometimes we try too much to do too many detailed section patterns. A lot of it's about choice of length. You know, so just have fun with the same section pattern and just adapt it. Cool. What was the question?
So first of all, guys, you can't see what's happening here in regards to feedback, but you've got lots of really positive responses. Everyone's saying thank you very much and how much they appreciate your time. A question from Ian Amazing Graham. So this question is actually for me, but Per, I'd like for you to take on this.
Yeah.
It says, Johnny, love what you guys do. When you put your hair collections together, what inspires you first? Is it what's around you that inspires you first, before hair? And what one main thing did Christopher leave you that you had never thought of before? So if I answer the Christopher bit, and you can do the collection bit, yeah?
Me first, you first?
Yeah, you first. You go first.
Collection-wise, company, you know, we've been going for 7 years now. I think we're on our, if you include British Hair Awards, we're number 13, you know, on collections. And a lot of the time, when we're thinking about collections, we try and find the human factor, if that makes sense. And I can try and describe it. So we try and find an individual that we find inspiring. Could be the first thing that we see is their work, you know, the detail of their work, or the passion and the commitment to their work. It could be their story, their journey, how they got to that point, you know, what encouraged them to create what they create. Yes, I definitely think all of our collections so far have had that common factor, which is the human element, you know, and also things that we try to do with our inspirations. A lot of the times you can look at anyone, anything, and take something literal. You know, you can use, I don't know, the definite shape of something that the person's created, and that's a literal thing. You know, or you can look at the emotional aspect of it as well. You know, the feeling of it, and that, if I just touch on Christopher, that's what I remember him saying. The feeling. I didn't understand what people meant before he mentioned what it meant. You know, as an artist, it's almost like leaving your impression of you on the work. You know, so
Thank you. So just to answer my point in regards to Christopher, what I got from Christopher was basically, I think it's very, very important as an individual hairdresser. I think it's really important to understand, in order for you to be able to plan the future, in order for you to be able to understand where you're going, it's important for you to not be ignorant to the past and the people that have started something which is only growing and only becoming stronger and stronger and stronger. And myself and Pedro were having a discussion the other day about, different generations of hairdressers, and it's really interesting because sometimes you kind of forget the journey. It's very easy to just absorb all this information that the team are sharing with you tonight, but all this information that's being delivered has started years ago, and it's evolved and evolved and evolved and evolved and evolved and evolved, and it will keep doing it, it won't stop. And that's the beauty of it. And for me, with Christopher, it was really important for us to give people like that the credibility and the visibility they deserve. So that was the goal behind Christopher, and I know it was a great response, and he got very emotional about it, and he felt very, very valued, and he should be. So that's what I got from it. So we've got a colour question here from Maddie. I'm going to pass it over in a second. Before I do, there is two people that I want to mention which aren't here today, and they are, in my opinion, two of the best hairdressers on the planet. So you've got Graham and Johan, who are also our Allilon educators. Graham is based in Switzerland and Johan is based in Brazil. Guys, I know you're probably watching, so if you are, I'm not forgetting you. Yeah? This is the UK team, and we've got our guys abroad. So, Maddie.
Yes.
I have a question here from Peter.
Yeah.
And basically it says, there is a celebrity hair salon in my country, not going to mention names, which has a TV program. Basically, they're telling that foil colouring is outdated and it damages the hair. What's your thoughts about that? And we have mixed feelings about it, to be honest, as we're using foil techniques a lot in the salon. What do you think?
Personally, I am a huge fan of foil. I find it malleable, the way you can fold it and the way you can use it to do many different things, not just a highlighting technique like this. I use it for pretty much every collection that we do, for covering colour, for manipulating colour, to lie between pieces of hair to protect the client. It's been around for a very, very long time. It's a technique that has gone on for decades, unlike a lot of the things that we see that are very fast-coming trends at the moment. But in particular, I really, really love a foil technique. I really enjoy a highlighting technique, and I don't think it will ever really completely go out of fashion. I mean, if you look at trends, it's been Fashion Week very, very recently. Look at a lot of the models on these catwalks. They will have a lot of soft highlights, and yes, the prevalence of balayage and things like that is huge these days, but I think something as beautiful and classic as a really gorgeous highlight is timeless, and it'll be around for a very, very long time. Thank you for the question.
So, Mr. John, graduation. How hard is it? What are the key problems people have? What tips would you give them to control graduation?
How hard is it? Extremely hard. I think if you can master elevation, then you will be somewhat successful when you're graduating hair. How can you control it? Cutting by numbers, counting your sections, making sure that you don't change the elevation of your seat, your head position so much with your model or your client. Understanding how you're grooming the hair, whether or not you're grooming it from the top or grooming it from underneath the bottom. Obviously consistency, again talking back into your elevation. Understanding how heavy the shape is that you're actually working on is really important. I've made a mistake here, my section's too thick, so it's actually, if you can see here, it's actually gone on too high. So I'm now going to groom that back down. So again, if you can't see your guide, then you shouldn't be cutting the hair. Making sure that you're working clean, so that you're not taking hair from different sections, like that's messy, so move your hand for me out, please. Thank you. So, really groom the hair, get that back nice and clean. Take my section again. There you go. There we go. So yeah, I mean, understanding the lengths really, externally shorter, internally longer, how much, you know, how's it changing, if it is changing throughout the haircut or if it's not, repetition, making sure that obviously with your balance, both sides of the graduation are the same. You know, how much or how wet the hair is. Are you letting it dry as you go? Your body position. I mean, there's so many things. I've gave you quite a few little tips there of what it is that helps you to control the graduation. I mean, I love graduation. Graduation to me is one of my, you know, it was one of the hardest things that I found when cutting hair, but I think it's one of the most rewarding, visually rewarding shapes that you can possibly do.
I think one of the things that people struggle with graduation is the understanding at what point to stop lifting. Do they stop lifting? Do they ever stop lifting? I mean, how do you control your elevation? I mean, personally, and you know, and we've had you know, everyone kind of has their own way of teaching it. I mean, I'm a firm believer of just to carry on lifting, if I'm honest. I think that if you tend to pull down too much, the shape gets obviously heavy. If you lift too much, the shape can go flat. I mean, which way do you do it? Do you pull down too much and learn from it the shape being heavy, or do you lift up too much and learn from the shape being flat? I mean, it's 6 and 2 3s really. You can do one way and then do the other way. You're going to go too short, you're going to be too long. Until you actually understand and can visually kind of see what the shape is vertically, and I mean that in your mind, how the hair's being lifted, that's one of the things that I didn't see for the first 3 months of my journey. I worked really methodically and very clean, but I just couldn't actually understand where I was actually lifting the hair to. And until what we say is the light, there's like a light switch in the head that comes on, until that light switch actually comes on, you don't really understand where you're lifting the hair onto the side. So I'm really making sure I'm using my finger on the underneath to support the head, so the head doesn't come towards me. When we spoke at the beginning, I said, you know, and I do say this to my clients, I say, you know, when I pull your hair, because I like to work with a lot of tension, you know, consistent tension. Some people will tell you not to, some people tell you, you know, not so much. Just understand where the muscles are on the head, understand how much the skin stretches, and have a consistent amount of tension. I mean, but I speak to my clients and I say, please, I need your head in this position. When I'm teaching, and I say, you know, my clients don't actually read or they don't do anything like that. I mean, people think that I'm gone mad, but it's like, how are you supposed to create your shape and have a nice, beautiful shape if your lady's reading a book and she's on a boat or something like that? You know, it's not easy for you to do your work. So it's not really what you say to your clients; it's kind of how you say it. And I think I've learnt that aspect, but I don't know. I went on quite a lot there, didn't I? Okay, Miss Hussey, you've got you're the only one here working on curly hair. What kind of curly hair tips do you have? What kind of advice would you give guys who maybe are scared of curls?
Well, it's hard to give general tips because I think every client is different, so I don't like to give general tips on any particular shape or texture. But for me, working on Storm's hair today, like I said earlier, I just want a lot of control. So making sure I'm working really clean sections. I think working with curly hair, it's easy to get lost in your shape. So making sure you've got complete control of every section every time. So I'm using, like Jonathan said, he's using a lot of tension. I am as well. I'm making sure I'm combing the hair right from the root. So in difficult areas, if I need to change my body position and the position of the comb to get that root really clean, then I'll move my body around. I I personally, as well I said earlier, just visually assessing the hair as you're working through the shape. What's working, what's not working. I mean, if you cut it too short, there's not much you can do, but you can always take hair shorter. So just assessing if the lengths you've chosen and are working at that moment are looking good.
So, I mean, to help you with curls, what product are you using to help you?
Yeah, today, as you can see, Storm's hair, because she hasn't had it cut for a while, it's quite difficult to comb through on yet. So I'm using the all-in-one milk, Davines all-in-one milk. It's just a creamier, thicker than the DD Mist. So I've used a bit of both. But yeah, that helps to keep the hair nicer, like a little coating on the hair. It makes it easier for me to comb the hair through and control it.
Pedro, you're blow drying now.
Yes, of course.
Did you use any specific products? How are you blow drying? What are you using?
Well, I don't know if you, I know Johnny's been trying to get a message across over the last few weeks regarding working from wet to dry. You know, and I'm a lover. You know, I love working from wet to dry with haircuts. I love seeing how the shape progresses. You know, I always, whenever possible, I try to encourage, you know, my students to work in that manner. You know, if the hair is right, if it's suitable to work in that way. But what I'll add to it is sometimes you get hair types that work from wet to dry, and the hair almost goes into a little bit of shock. You know, you need to kind of rehydrate the hair to get it back to its natural state, for the hair to give the hair a chance to be used to that length. You know, so especially shorter hair, I think that's something that I do quite a bit. And I do the same with products. You know, like with Millie's hair, I was looking at the choices of products, and I was thinking about, you know, do I use a cream, do I use a lotion, do I use a mousse? And I decided on a lotion. Something that we spoke about in the consultation was sometimes you feel it's a little bit flat, you know, so I chose something which is a lotion but it's going to give a little bit of hold, a little bit of body. It's one of my favourites to work with. It's Your Hair Assistant, the Blow Dry Primer. So it's our friend Angelo's creation associated with Davines, and he's produced some amazing products. And this is one of the ones that I use quite a bit, especially in the salon scenario. You know, like a DD Mist is great, but it's almost like expensive water. You know, it's going to give you a nice shine on the hair, but it's not really going to give you anything else but good quality hair. But this one's just going to kind of give you the ability to mould and shape the hair a little bit more. The hair feels a little bit fuller. So really important when you're blow drying to focus. Well, it's almost like you're using it as a cross check. You know, you're kind of focused on the elements. You're looking at your external shape. You know, you're not just going through the motions of blow drying. You're actually assessing what you're going to do when you personalise and refine. So I haven't done any external shapes. My external shape has been created by my choices of my internal lengths and my direction. So I'm assessing, you know, what the hair wants to do. So I'm looking at the bend in the hair. I'm looking at, okay, so where's it going to sit nicely for her? You know, is it going to be easy to maintain if I leave it too long? Do I have to go sharper with the external shape? You know, I'm just asking lots of questions like that in my head when I'm working through. And when I'm wrap drying, I think when we do primary shape classes, one of the hardest things I think students, you know, have to learn in them 4 days is how to do a good blow dry. You know, and it's such an essential part. And I know Johnny's touched on it in the last few you know, Facebook lives, but you know, unless you've got a good blow dry, you know, you make it near on impossible for yourself to really personalise and refine in the right way.
Cool. So Mads, if we can bring your attention up to Mads, Mads is going to be talking about the time.
So our colour's had its processing time now. It's all ready. You can see that it's oxidised around the outside here. Davines colour tends not to go as dark in the Vibrapron range when it's oxidising, but don't be alarmed by this, guys. In particular, the extra lifts don't show too much tone, but I promise you they lift and they tone beautifully. I just wanted to quickly show you before I take Melody for a shampoo. I'm going to do it at the seat. Normally I would do it at the back wash, but I wanted to show you what I was talking about with folding those foils in that way. So in the salon, the assistants are some of the hardest working people. They do all the little jobs and all the busy jobs that we need them to do really, really quickly. So I think it's important to make their lives a bit easier. Some of these, yes, you will have to open, but when you have this little fold at the bottom here, what you can do is use it essentially as a handle and really quickly come through and remove all of your foils in a matter of seconds. You see how quickly I'm coming through here, even with my shaky, nervous hands, and how quickly I can get all of these foils out of this whole section in Melody's hair using this little handle on the bottom. But it also is really nice and secure. It's not until you open and pull that away. Am I hurting you, Melody?
No, it's all right.
There you go. Perfect little handle to remove all your foils. Thank you, beautiful assistants, Johnny. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to shampoo Melody's hair now. I'm going to use the Silver Alchemics range from Davines. That's just going to help tone out some of those pieces that I've lifted again and just give a really nice shine to the hair. I'm not going to leave it on for any amount of time, just a normal conditioner. So Melody, if you want to take a seat there, just in the back of the show, we're going to shampoo and then Alex is going to blow dry and bring it back up.
So, John, I noticed that you applied your product in a specific way.
Yes, sir.
Do you want to talk to the guys about what you did and how you did it?
I'm using volume mousse. The reason why I'm using volume mousse is not to create volume. It's actually to give the hair a little bit of hold. It doesn't look like the hair's got movement in it, but around the hairlines there's quite a little bit of movement. If you come in here, there you go, in here. So I've actually had to blow dry that little bit of movement out. There's a little bit of movement there. So I'm using it to basically give me hold. Now, how did I apply it? I put it on with my brush. So I squirted quite a big amount into my hand, and then I used my hand as a palette. Now, when I blow dry, what you'll notice, look, is I'm actually really quite firm and strong. I push the hair nice and slow, because then what's happening is if you look at the root, it's actually straight from the root, the mid-length to the end. Now, I'm not blow drying this hair here. I'm actually blow drying this hair here. So as I push, the airflow is actually focusing here at the top. It's not worrying about this. Why? Because if I get the root sitting nice and flat, the rest of it will actually just fall and collapse on top of it. If you imagine like a set of stairs, like a staircase, if you don't build the first stair properly, or the first foot of the ladder properly, then what will happen is that the ladder won't work, or the staircase won't work. It's a bit like starting a building from the root. You wouldn't do it. Now, if I imagine that my root is the foundation, and I'll spin you around now, look, I haven't actually touched the mid-lengths or the ends yet, and you can see that the hair is actually sitting nice and smooth already. So that's called wrap drying. What's wrap drying? It's a form of tension drying, because again I'm stretching the hair. Now, if you choose the correct length, you shouldn't have to manipulate the blow dry so much. The hair should just sit on its own. So again, you can see, look, that I'm not actually head down from it. So again, making sure that the model's in the right place at all time, helping me with gravity. You can see, look, that I don't have to manipulate the mid-lengths or the ends, and the hair's actually sitting quite nice. It sits quite shiny. James Abualba's with us.
Lots of friends have joined in. Okay, right now you've got sort to stand up, and you're working in there with the picture scissors rather than subcutting. Talk us through that, the whole process.
Okay, so I've got form to stand up, because her hair is just so long. So rather than me cut her hair on my knees, I just get her to stand up, and then I can stand back and see the external shape clearly. You didn't see it before, but the external shape came down quite low into a point, so obviously I've worked internally, shorter to the front, longer towards the back, so the external shape is going to follow that as well. When I cut curly hair for the external length, as I said to you earlier, when I was doing the internal length, I used a lot of tension, so I've got a lot of control over the hair. Externally, I wanted to see how it would sit naturally, because in the past from experience, I find if I use a lot of tension on the external shape, when it dries and it jumps up, it's too rounded for them. So I didn't use that much tension when I cut the external shape. I just comb the hair down, so I have a bit of control. Use the wide side of my comb the hair down, and just secured the hair. And I just point cut the length away, just so I kept it a little bit softer, like for the hair towards the front. I'm not going to touch the hair at the front, I'm just going to let the internal shape create that external shape. It was too long originally through the centre back, so that's why I just got Storm to stand up and assess it. So it's still looking a little bit longer here, so then I'll just comb it through again. And I'll just keep doing that until when it's expanded, it's its more natural form. The balance is nice.
It's good that you said that, Kate, because there's actually a question that I can direct straight to you. This is from Maria. She says, "Hi everyone, it's absolutely amazing watching your live video and great to see you all together, which is obviously one thing we've been aiming to do. And the question is, for you Mrs. Kate, is when do you prefer using the wide suit or the tighten of the comb? And what's the pros and cons to it?"
Generally, whenever I'm taking a section, I'll use, can't hear me since I'm quiet. When I'm taking a section, I'll use the wide side of the comb. So I'm going to get a cleaner section. It's just easier for me to take that using the wider side of the comb. Whenever I'm grooming excess hair, I'll use the tighter side of the comb, so it gives me more tension, so I can get the excess hair nice and clean and smooth. If I want less tension when I'm cutting, I'll use the wide side of my comb. So say I had if I was working on Jonathan's lengths and he had a jumpy crown, as I'm getting towards the crown I might swap to the wide side. So I'm not going to pull the hair away from how it naturally wants to fall too much. I'm using less tension on there. And the same for Storm's hair. I don't want to put too much tension on it because I want it to see how it falls naturally in its natural curly form. So I'm more happier with that now.
Now, I've got one more question directly for you, okay?
Yeah.
It's from Tonic Hair. They say, "Hi everyone, Kate, when over-directing long, thick hair, is it right to hold your guide and the section you're cutting and leave the hair you are not cutting out of the way? For example, 7 to 3 and leave 4, 6 and 5 out."
I find that quite difficult to leave out the hair in between. You could do it, you could try it, there's nothing wrong. But I would find it easier to have my guide still in section 3 and just making sure everything's going to that same point. For me personally, it just helps me know that I'm pushing or pulling that hair to the same point for every section. I've never tried it the other way. I think I'd find that quite hard.
Okay, yes, this is from George. It says, "The choice of length," thank you Kate, "the choice of length and the change and of the change cutting the hair, you decide them now or from the start?" And I think what he's basically asking is, do you tend to choose your choice of length at the beginning or as you're working through the haircut?
Good question. Obviously, in this case, I haven't done my external shape yet. So when I was choosing my initial choice through the back, I was thinking about how much weight I need in at the bottom to maintain my shape. I was thinking about what kind of silhouette I want. Once I established that, I think it gave me a better idea of the choice of length through the sides. So I think sometimes when I start a haircut, I think about what's my priority, what do I want to have. I knew what the back, I wanted it to look like. And then from there, it kind of led me towards what choice of length on the side. But that's not always the case. Sometimes I'm a little bit more structured. I know exactly what lengths are going to be in each zone. Sometimes the hair dictates that as well. So now I've got this nice silhouette. This side's my slightly shorter side, so I'm going to start here first. I'm going to look at the lengths that I like. Yeah. So for example, I like that. See that bit there? I really like that. So that's going to be my kind of source of inspiration to kind of work from that. Again, I'm not going to go for something too sharp because obviously my whole idea with this shape was to keep it quite loose. So I'm just using a personalising and refining technique called pointing, or just chipping at the outlines. And I'm thinking how it kind of fits in with the neck, and I'm also thinking how it fits in with that length at the front. You know, I could be a little bit more cleaner. I do like them lengths, but I know in a few weeks that's just going to irritate Millie, them little kind of looser pieces.
Okay, I've got a question here from Jonathan. Would you ever use a razor to create this kind of shape when then sharpen up the exterior shape?
Would I ever use a razor? I think the philosophy of Allilon is to understand when, why and how. You know, so for me, thinking about Millie's hair, in this case, I wouldn't say it was suitable. I think her hair's so beautiful. It sits so well. You know, I've only got clean lines inside here. You know, if I pull this out and I pull a shape out, there's only clean lines in there, and it sits like it's been softened already. You know, so I think it would be, it's all about choices, and I think in this situation I wouldn't think it was a suitable choice. And that's not to say that there isn't a hair type out there or a situation out there that wouldn't suit a razor, but in this situation I don't think it would have been even in my mind to use a razor with this hair type.
We've got some kind of, obviously we've got some information we're going to go through in a minute in regards to dates of primary shape courses. Tell me why do we do primary shape courses? What's the benefit of them? What would people learn? For those of you who are watching, if you've done a primary shape course, you know, what benefit has it done for you? What have you learned from it? How will it help you and how will it help people watching?
Is that a question to me? It started off to me, but then it kind of went down to them, and I'm like, is it me or them? Okay, it's me. And it, obviously, if anyone else wants to add to that as well, that'd be great. But I mean, for us, you know, a lot of the time people see us on stage and we're doing work that's not necessarily conforming. You know, so really trying to challenge people's eyes, not necessarily do the simplest of things. So every opportunity we get, you know, to do something where it's suitable to kind of experiment, we love it, you know. But that's not, Allilon is more about trying to make a difference in the industry, and the only way we can do that is by kind of sharing our decision making, our thought process, in the way that we were able to kind of challenge ourselves and do creative things, you know. So to really have a good foundation, you know, is our passion. You know, all of the guys, Kate, Jonathan, you know, Mads, Sam, Harriet, Johan, Graham, you know, they all have the same beliefs. They all love teaching people how to cut hair, you know. And to come on a collection course, which is at the end of the journey, without understanding the language and the approach and the decision making and the choices, for us it defeats the object. You know, so we only offer, you know, in the UK Academy, we only offer primary shape courses because I think it's easy for people to kind of be in the industry and kind of say, well, I've been cutting hair for 20 years, so, you know, I want to learn, I want to be inspired. And we get that, you know, we understand that. But to really get the most out of a collection course, you know, you really need to understand the way that our minds work, the way that we process all of these choices that we make, and to speak it as well, you know. So this year, you know, the primary shapes has been as popular as it, you know, as it's ever been. You know, the Allilon community is growing, you know, and we decided to put 4 courses in this year, and then we've sold out, you know, on our course in June, on the 12th of June. So we've decided to stick another one in there in July, on the 17th of July, you know, because the demand is up there. I think people realise that they need to invest in themselves, and not everyone's been blessed with a great apprenticeship, you know, or had amazing mentors, and that's the key. You know, like anyone who's out there who's kind of starting in the industry, you know, there's two ingredients to becoming, you know, the best that you can be. One is to have an amazing apprenticeship, and 2 is to, you know, surround yourself by people who are supporting you and growing you, so to have good mentors. You know, and it's not, you know, in your life you don't just have one mentor. You know, you have to kind of keep searching. You know, and our objective, mine and Johnny's objective, is to, you know, make people better than us. You know, make our team stronger than us.
Not hard, mate.
You know. But that's not just mechanically, you know, that's just everything, you know, teaching, you know, being on stage. And when I hear these two talking, you know, talking hair, cutting, you know, it blows my mind, you know, because I'm getting old now, I can't talk that way.
So the dates are on the board. We're going to show you the dates in a minute. Kate, before we go to the dates, just quickly, you've been prepping the hair for drying, so
Yeah.
talk to us for it.
Well, I'm actually really lucky because Storm's got beautiful curly hair. Sometimes I use a mousse on curls. It depends what result I want. If I want lots of volume, I'll probably put a little bit of mousse in it. I'm not an amazing dresser of hair, so I don't ever claim to be. So Storm's making it very easy for me. So today I've just used the Davines Curl Building Serum. I like it because it's heavy and it adds moisture to the hair, but it doesn't go crispy. And you've seen I've been coating her hairs, I've been cutting it with the DD and the oil all-in-one milk. I really like the effect of the all-in-one milk on her hair, so I've just coated all the ends, just making sure everything's evenly distributed in products before I start drying. I've positioned the hair. I don't want to make Storm's hair massive today, I just want it to be quite natural. I've positioned her little fringe how I want it to be. I think she looks beautiful like this. Quite I don't know. Oh, yeah, I won't say that.
You look like a little Egyptian.
I'm going to say like 70. Oh, no, I'm stopping to think. She's 70 stone. She's beautiful, so she can take any haircut. So yeah, I'm just going to start by imagining the air is just drying Storm's hair, so I'm not going to touch it too much at the beginning. I do like to touch curly hair when I'm drying it. I know some people don't, but I'm a fan of doing it. So first of all, I'm just going to start off on the roots, just setting those roots everywhere. The fringe I won't touch, just set that with the diffuser. The diffuser's going to give me a softer airflow, so it's not going to force the hair anywhere too much. It'll be like her hair's drying naturally outside. And then I'll work on the mid-lengths and ends. So I just use a slow speed, medium to high heat, depending on what hair dryer you're using, so you don't burn the dryer.
Why are you using a diffuser with the diffuser now instead of stock diffuser on Storm's hair?
Just personal preference. Yeah, and some people love those stock diffusers. I have used them, I like them, but yeah, maybe the diffusers in the cupboard. It's a sock, I'm using a sock, but yeah.
I mean, the biggest pro and con is obviously with it. Yeah, with the prongs, the hair can wrap around the prongs.
That's what I prefer.
Yeah,
I think like, if you want to create volume, I personally find it, without having to tilt the hair in different ways, you can do it with these little teeth. But I ain't used to soft enough to be able to turn the arm, so sorry about that. You don't know, you just get it down to the top.
Yeah, I love it.
What, so you use it, how do you get volume?
Not my stop. I don't know, I just, like you say, you like using your hands. I like using my hands too, so it's just the instead of using the prong, you're using your hand with that weight on something, aren't you? So, yeah, I just like, I mean, you said you like touching the hair, Kate, so is there do's and don'ts to touching the hair? You know, like what not to do, you know, the way that you touch it. It's not just about touching it, it's the way. I agree with you, you can touch it, but it's just you have to be careful the way not to touch it, don't you?
Yeah, like now for example, I don't want to change Storm's style too much, so I'll just pick it up, because I want to dry the roots, so I have to pick the hair up to dry the roots, but I'm not going to pick it up and run my fingers through it, because obviously I'm going to start to separate the curl. So I just pick the hair up and then just circulate the airflow at the root. The drier it gets, the more I run my fingers through it. Like at the end, if I feel like it's too set, I'll get a bit of oil, rub it in my hands and then run the hair through and then just scratch it again. I think it depends what sort of style you want. So if it's like a looser wave, then you can afford to run your fingers through it more. When it's like a very curly look, then I try not to run my fingers through it, but I will shake it out, try and make it look less set, more natural.
Okay. Thank you. So on the board, Andy, if you just want to skim forward, we've got some set dates for primary shapes. For those of you who'd like to be interested in our primary shapes course in the UK. And these are also some dates, just some of the dates that we're going to be doing internationally. If you're interested in being any of these events, next week we're going to have I'm going to write them all down for you, because at the end of every Facebook Live, we always get like emails. I get about maybe 10-15 emails on average talking about you know, where are you in the next class, or when you coming to the States, when are you coming to South Africa, so what I'm going to do next week is we're going to have a list of all the dates, where we're going to be, the kind of email addresses that you can email to find out more information for that, okay? So, Miss Melly, over here, you've been busy doing some stuff.
No, wait, to be able to read it. This particular show in London, guys, HOS stands for Hair on Stage. They are Davina's events. We're doing this event in London on the 9th of April. This will be in the Hackney Empire. If you are a Davina's client, speak to your distributor about this one. We're going to be there with Angelo Seminara, who was British Hairdresser of the Year last year again. Congratulations, Angelo. We're also going to be with Taylor and Blue Tit, who also use the Davina's products. So please speak to your distributor if you are a Davina's client about this particular event. Pedro's off to Chile with Johan that Johnny spoke about earlier, and then we've got a couple of classes that we're doing. I'm also teaching colour in Lithuania on the 4th and 5th of May, guys. So if there's anybody from Lithuania that's watching, we will be doing some colour classes there, and there will be a couple of spaces left. So let me show you what I've been doing while the guys have been working. I wasn't being lazy, I promise. I did all my highlights early this morning, did that little bit for you. What we have here is just a really simple head sheet. I try and make my colour head sheets as simple as possible because they can be a nightmare to draw and to understand. So on the bottom here, we have got a key. This is our cutting key. We're not going to use that obviously because we're colouring hair. So I've created my own key here using the same colours and the same sort of design that the cutting has, so that when they're next to each other, you can understand them. So really simply here, guys, I've shown you my horseshoe section through the front. It was slightly to an angle at one side and it was tapered towards the back. The stars indicate my freehand comb-on technique that I use, just using the tip of a pintail comb. The black indicates the shape of my section. Then we have the green lines, you can see that just at the front there in my high lift, my 12.21, and then we have my 9.11 here. These are to indicate that they're weaves. I could draw every single one on there, but it's become really, really hard to understand and to read and to look at. When I'm drawing my colour head sheets, a lot of the time what I like to do is either have a photograph of the colour that I've been drawing, or if I can, have a mannequin in front of me. It really helped me when I started to draw my colour head sheets to understand what my section looked like. If you have a mannequin or a person in front of you, you can take that horseshoe section again and you can move the head. You can take the angle that you're going to work at, look at it in real life and then put it on a piece of paper. I found that a lot easier working with a mannequin or something movable useful to go, right, where was my angle? And then I can really use my visual representation on my board again.
Cool. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
So, Paddy,
Yes.
you put your basic shape in,
Yes.
you grab the hair off.
Yes.
Did you iron the hair?
No.
Okay. Well, Jonathan's ironing it, you haven't ironed yours. What's the benefits to ironing it and not ironing it? And what are you doing now?
Okay, so I think it's, like I said before, it's just about choices, you know, making decisions. You know, Jonathan's made a choice on the hair type that he's working with that an iron is suitable. You know, I've made a choice that Millie's hair doesn't really need it. You know, I could come through at the end and kind of polish it a little bit more, but you know, it's a matter of the style that you want to achieve as well, potentially. Okay, so I didn't show you what I did on the top when the hair was wet, so let me show you what I did on the top when the hair was wet. So, come over here and I took out this front section. Alright, that length there was probably down, you know, she had a line before, but, you know, just touching her shoulder. So what I did with this is I just took vertical sections in there, sections from kind of the crown to the front hairline, and I worked everything to that first section. Alright, if you look behind that, that's a lot longer. Yeah, so if you look at these two lengths here, they don't actually connect. Yeah, so you've got that there, which is the fringe, and then that there, which is giving us our length. Okay, so what I did with this back part of the triangle is I took a guide from the crown and just kind of worked up through there and over directed everything back to that point. Alright, so not only am I disconnected from the fringe, but if you look through the sides here, you should also see another zone underneath. Yeah, so you've got my original zone through the side, you've got the triangle above, and then you've got the fringe and then at the front. So you've got one zone, two zone, three zone, all kind of merging together there. And what that does, it just gives you, see this little bit of length just there that can kind of swing and move, and then you've got the shorter kind of shape that sits just in front of it. So you've just got that extra little bit of length to kind of play around with. That can kind of swing and move. I mean, if I connected everything in, you know, if I used this length and connected everything in, I would have had much more of a layered shape for the front, which would work as well, but I just wanted that extra little bit of length and weight in that area. Alright, so there is this connection. There's this connection behind the ears, there's this connection in this triangle on top, in relationship to the fringe and in relationship to the side. So also because I cut it from the parting, you'll find that there's this connection that sits next to it on this side as well. Yeah, so you've got that zone. So if I take a cross section right through the middle, you'll see on either side you've got a short zone there and a short zone on the other side, and then the length running through the middle. Make sense?
That's really pretty. Really pretty. It's coming together lovely.
Did you have a question for me about the colour, Johnny?
So I have a question. It's about colour. It says, Maddie, can you please tell us the difference between the mask and the mask with Vibracom? And while Maddie's talking about that, if we can focus on what Jonathan's working on in regards to the line, and that way people can visually see hair being done a lot more.
Okay, so thank you for your question, Tonic Hairstar. I'll give a very brief explanation so that Jonathan can explain what he's doing as well to you. So our previous mask was CPS. The CPS stood for Cream, Protection and Shine. So the Vibracom technology is a brand new trademark technology linking to the textiles world for outstanding colour durability, extra shine and protection on the hair. And what I'll do for you is I'll explain a little bit more about that technology on one of our colour lives with Johnny, and I'll tell you all about our brand new technology within the Vibracom.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
John, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
With your external shape, you've only cut half of the back.
Yeah.
What's the thought process? I mean, explain that to me.
Well, if I don't know, if you remember at the start, for those of you who was with the start, the fixed analysis was that on the left-hand side there was quite a strong growth pattern. Can you remember, John, when we was talking right at the beginning?
Yeah.
And so basically, I knew that on this right-hand side, I could actually put my, I could be a little bit more bolder and put the whole of the external shape in. So I saw where the length was sitting behind the ear, and I kind of focused on where the hair was sort of in front of the ear. And then, because I don't want to kind of be, too risky on camera, I do like to take risks, but when there's quite a lot of you watching, it would be a little bit silly of me to try and work it in when it was wet and then see it react in front of everyone. So what I did is I just basically chose my length and then I blow dried it. So when I blow dry it, I've got a little bit more control of the length that I can kind of work up to. I can see how much weight's sitting in the external shape for me to be able to manage the shape a little bit better. I'm just now, just checking the mirror. I'm using my mirror just now to see that see how the line's sitting, starting to look quite nice. I'm going to use the tips of my scissors now. Really make sure that the hair's sitting in its natural fall. We had I don't want to plug the scissors too much, but the scissors are 5.25, so basically you can, you've got the help with an extra 2.5 of the length for your cut in your scissor over comb, and then with the blades you've got still a nice little thin blade that allows you to do all that nice little detail work. So I'm using a chipping technique. You can see it's starting to come together a little bit. I've got a lot of work to do still, just really to put the shape together. I'm kind of happy with the internal shape on this side. That's the reason why I've moved on to my external shape. If I was to keep flittering between internal, external, what would happen is that, it would carry on changing the weights between the two. So it's starting to look quite nice. I'm just going to use my comb now. Look, drag the comb up the hair. See how it all falls back into its natural fall. Don't comb it so it looks nice. Comb it so, it's sitting in its natural fall. Give it a nice little tap. I know that's a little bit, your clients look at you like, what are you doing? But as I do that, look, the hair starts to sit back in its natural fall. As I've done that, I can see I've got to work there, look. And I've got a little bit of work to do just there. So I come back round. Usually I can use the mirror, but it's quite far away today, so I'm not going to risk it. Just work it with a nice little tip. Yeah, no pressure when you've got one of the best hair cutters in the world holding the camera, Andy. And another one, Johnny. No pressure either.
Just now you were tapping. Talk me through that process. What does that do?
Well, basically that just helps me to stick the hair in its natural fall. Like, I comb it, so I can comb it till it looks nice. But if I do this, like that, and I brush all the hair back, and then I just comb it down, as I do that and I tap the hair starts to fall down into shape. So I can keep moving the hair, of course. But as the hair now starts to come back into its, natural fall, I can tap, and I can sort of see where all my, where all my little mistakes are. So you could do that, and you could go this side here, and just make sure that you close the blade on the way out, and that way then look, I can, just really start to tidy that up, which is quicker, just a little quicker way of doing that in the salon that we've learned. I mean, but if you're a young hairdresser out there and you really want to push yourself to the limit, I don't just want to say it, but I've had, or me and Kate, we have, they're going to hate this, but we do have, the two best mentors that we could ask for. I mean, I'm not after a pay rise, but they are now. I mean, anyone in the room, obviously Madeline included, it's just a nice environment to be taught in, because I'm still learning. We're still learning every single day. I mean, we have great debates between ourselves, but then we've got like the likes of Iveta and Alex and Harriet and Graham and Johan and and obviously Kane over there, and there's a few younger team which I can't now, sorry. But we, you know, we're all being pushed, and that's the key. You know, I'm trying to push Pedro, I'm trying to push Johnny, but they're pushing us because they want our job. Alex wants my job.
Oh.
So, just putting attention over to what Maddie's doing. Maddie's time.
I was going to give you a
I'm going to try and get it under some good light for you guys because it is a very subtle, soft holiday highlight that I've done. So if I really pull the hair down like this and smooth it all down, you should see those different tones running through here like this. But also if I pull this back, can you see that on there, Andy? Is that picking up nicely? So you can see we've got a really nice light blonde, and then we have a really nice soft ash blonde with our 9.11 there, guys. So anybody that was asking me earlier about the 9.11, that's definitely one of my new favourites. It's beautiful, really gorgeous. And then you can see just through the sides here where I really gently just combed on some of that colour. It's just given a little bit of a lift and lightness around the areas where Christopher cut off the bits that had been just a little bit lightened by the sun. And I'm very, very happy because the first thing Melody said to me when she came back in the room that she loves it. So thank goodness for that. I'm going to get Johnny to dress it all nicely for us now.
I'm actually going to get Mr. Alex to do that. I'm busy.
Sorry.
So Kate, now you're starting to play with it, now you're starting to loosen the shape up.
Yeah.
And I know that John's going to work on his outline. So John, when you're ready, let us know and we'll bring the attention back to what you're doing. But you're working it and you're really playing with it now, you're starting to loosen it. When is it okay to really get your fingers in there and really kind of play with it and loosen it up? And when should you be safe?
I start to move the hair, the drier it gets. So when it's say about 90% dry, then I'll start to run my fingers through it a little bit more. Not running through it, but just start to move the hair. I was shaking it. Storm's got amazing hair, and I keep saying it, yeah, so I'm lucky. Like obviously the loose of the curl, I wouldn't move it as much as I'm doing now, but I know it's not going to change, it's not going to loosen the curl. I think the products will work really well on our hair as well.
Beautiful.
I'm a bit nervous, I thought my dad would pretty, but they've worked quite well. So yeah, I just need to loosen it up a little bit. And if I want to flatten it down a bit afterwards, I will, but I want to make sure the roots are dry as well.
It feels alive.
I like to dry curly hair till it is completely dry. Sometimes I need it a little bit damp, but I want to see it when the hair's completely dry to check my shape as well.
A lot of people tend to be a bit scared of curly hair. What advice would you give people in regards to?
Oh, the choice of legs is massive, I think. And that's the hardest thing to get right. Oh, when I was watching Penn earlier, I was Pedro always gets the choice of length 100% right. But
Not
it's...
always.
No, you do. I think you do.
What about mine?
Yeah.
That's my choice of length.
You've got a lot of options, bro. You've got a lot of options there.
That's not a choice.
I'll try.
No choice.
Side stayed in the top, disappeared.
So John, I've got a question for you, which I think is going to be relative to what you're about to do. Before we do that, okay, what product are you putting in?
Yeah, so that's nothing actually. When it was about 90% dry, I just added some oil. So I put about 8 pumps in, massage it into your hands, and then I just scrunched it through. Any area that was getting a bit dry, I just scrunched it on, just add a little bit more shine to it, and then I like to just dry it in. Sometimes I'll use sea salt spray. I might add a little bit more of the Colombian serum or the oil milk, but yeah, like I said, Storm's hair's not reacting too much to me, drying it and playing with it too much, so I'm only needing to use a little bit of oil.
So that's the oil from that one, yeah?
Yeah, it's amazing. You don't be scared to use a lot of it either, because people see me I use about 10 pumps on my hair and I've got about 3 hairs. Still makes it nice.
That's 2 more than me.
3 more than John.
Okay, John, I've got a question for you. This is from Andreas, and it says, love what you're doing, guys. Jonathan, when refining your line through the mirror, does the chair have to be very close to the mirror?
I mean, it definitely makes it a little bit easier. That is for sure. But I think it's about the way that you open and close your blade. If you close the blade on the way in, obviously it can be a little bit more dangerous than closing the blade on the way out. So if you're working in the mirror and you're closing on the way in, then it can be a little bit scary. But if you're closing the blade on the way out, then it's not so bad. But yeah, the closer you get to the mirror, obviously the easier it becomes. Just depends how good your eyesight is. My eyesight's not too bad, you know. I'm getting a little bit older, and my eyesight's sort of starting to play me a little bit of trouble. If I can borrow your finger for me, go the other way, this way here. See that? I've just got a little bit of a weight line. Now, the hair actually is quite straight. I didn't iron any of the back, but it's got different elements to it. Some areas it's really straight, some areas it's actually a little bit kinky. So what I do is I look for where the weight line's sitting, no weight line there, so to speak. Now as I come over where the crown is, I'm going to get a little weight line in through here. So I'm just going to lift that up a little bit higher. So as I cut it, almost a little bit like a scissor over comb. Now, what I need to understand is actually what the vertical shape is doing. I'm lifting on that vertical shape. So all I do is I carry on lifting higher each time. As soon as I start to remove that corner, what will happen is my shape will go from being triangular vertically to triangular into round. But it will still be triangular expanded, but it will just be less triangular, so it will be less heavy. You just need to understand where you're actually lifting it to as you're lifting the hair. The crown's now playing quite a big part in what I'm doing. I'm using the wide end of the comb. As I lift up higher, it's just gently removing little bits of length each time. And then when I brush the hair back down, it just softens the line ever so slightly. If you get to a point where your technique is good and you need to personalise the shape a little bit, then just use a little bit of pointing. Just use an ever so slight little bit of pointing. I've worked with a side parting, and what's happening is where the natural fall's sitting, this hair here, look, I'm going to take that off because it naturally wants to sit a little bit further back. So I'm just taking that little bit of hair off, blending it into my shape. Once I'm happy with the internal, I'm going to move on to the external. So I'm going to carry on for another few minutes now, just really making sure that my internal shape is sitting quite nice, and just work with the gravity.
So Kate, there's a question here regarding curly hairs. Would you dry afro hair in the same way you dry Caucasian hair?
To be honest, I don't cut many afros. So when I have in the past, I've just let it. It's always been dry when my models arrive, so I just cut it dry. Depending again on the texture, how tight the curl is. If it's really, really tight, I'll just cut it dry. And then I kind of communicate with the model before that they would have washed it a few days before, and then they don't really need to wash it again. So you could I would use a diffuser if I had to dry it. I would use a diffuser. I wouldn't touch it as much, but again, it depends how tight the curl is. If an afro that you're creating a beautiful silhouette on, I wouldn't touch it, and I would get the client or the model to bring their own product in, really, what they used to use, or I just use a lot of oil again. So it's a bit vague, but yeah.
So Ped, I've got a question for you. It's something that we kind of touched on before, but maybe we're going to go into more detail about. It's a question from Cal Norman, and what he says is, when do you use flat irons when refining, and when do you decide not to?
Good question. Thanks, pal. I think we got to a point. I mean, I know me and Johnny, our career kind of started on the when irons were kind of born. I remember the first ones that we had.
The white ones with the blue pads.
Yeah,
fabulous. They were shocking, weren't they?
And there was ones as well as alongside that, ones from Italy with big
Big
ones.
metal ones.
You know, it's kind of like, you know, I remember having this tool, and it's kind of like thinking about, oh, it's a blessing, you know, and guilty myself, I'm sure, of overusing it, you know, like not making the choice for the hair, but just making it, you know, just because it's a habit, you know, and I think that's something that, you know, we all really need to consider, you know, whenever we're working. I'm just going to use the mirror here. Whenever we're working, I think sometimes we need to, you know, just think about our choices a little bit more. You know, so I would say think of an iron as a tool which is there to polish the hair, not forget it of the word straightening. You know, that word straightening I think is a bit like the word one length. You know, it's a literal thing, and it's not one length. It's a line. You know, it's not a straighten iron. It's a flat iron. It's there to polish. You know, so I would definitely kind of say think of it as a polishing tool. It shouldn't be there to kind of
disguise about blow dry.
Yeah, not just it should be there to blow dry. You know, it's more about being there to you know, to complement the texture. You know, like if I felt now with Millie's hair that she needed the hair needed more polish or more shine, then I would choose to use it. But I think she's got, you know, she's making me look good with her hair texture. You know, it's just so shiny and smooth. It needed minimal kind of effort to kind of, you know, to get a good finish on the hair. You know, so it's just about choices. You know, it's not, irons aren't wrong. It's just knowing when to use them. You know, and it's like anything. You know, scissors can be used in the wrong way.
Guys, it's looking beautiful. Honestly, all three of them look killer. And obviously, you've got man's beautiful colour. So, John, you're going to move on to the last phase now, aren't you, which is your external shape.
Yeah, I'm just working the line at the front first. Just because this bit's easier.
It's very good. What kind of finishing products do you use? Paper?
I haven't used anything yet. I'm probably just going to use a little bit of shine in the spray form, not in necessarily an oil form, just to give it a little bit more reflection. Killer, John. Love the texture, okay.
Okay, so basically, this is the plan over the next couple of weeks. We've got a special guest coming soon. Again, for those of you who follow the Allilon Unplugged, you'll basically see a promotion for a lady called Nikki Pope. Nikki Pope, for me, is a very, very intelligent woman. Really understands the industry. She's actually the editor of Tribute magazine, which is one of, again, in our opinion, one of the best magazines you can have there, which is out there. And she's been lucky enough to, we've been lucky enough, sorry, should I say, to spend some time with her and get to know her, and we consider her a friend now. And she's been generous enough to come one night with us to our Facebook Unplugged, Allilon Unplugged, and to basically talk to you and share with you what it is that she looks for in a magazine. For those of you out there who maybe are doing competition work or want to get your work into magazines, kind of what does an editor look for? So we're going to be having an evening, a Q&A evening with Nikki Pope. That's going to be coming and be advertised soon. Also, we're going to have our up-and-coming educators, the guys who are teaching for Allilon at the moment, but also on a journey to become better and better and better as educators. So we'll have an evening with Sam and Harriet based in the UK. Also, what we're going to do is have a staff training evening where we're going to have all of our younger juniors cutting hair under like a staff training environment. So for those of you who own salons and you want to see how we do it, Kate's going to be giving like a demonstration of how we build the students' portfolios and how we document all the work we do. What we're going to do, we're going to bring the attention back to Jonathan, okay? And Jonathan's going to start to work on the back of the external shape and refine it. Let's go have a look.
So I've just finished off the left-hand side, working slightly longer look towards the front, the lips, because we really wanted to keep something a little bit asymmetric going. Let me just drag this in, get the natural part in the back.
Beautiful, John, on camera.
You know, camera's a good one. Not bad in real life, Kate says. Did you hear that? That's what I've got fought with.
So So what are you doing now, and why are you going to do it that way?
I'm doing it this way, look, 'cause I've done what Johnny's little technique from day, what week was that?
The dot start.
The dot to dot, yeah.
So basically we did that on day...
Was it the third week?
Third one, yeah.
So basically I put the length in behind here, and now what I'm doing is I'm standing here so I can see the kind of 2 points where I want to work. Now this length here might not be the right length in the middle, but I'm just going to basically connect the dots now. I'm going to slightly just spin the chair as I do it, because that way then it will help me to arc the shape. Now again, all I'm doing is I'm actually pulling out with the scissor as I work. So I'm going to put now the head up, and then I'll put it back down again, move it around, have a look, comb the hair down. Yeah, the texture is quite aggressive in the nape. So once I put this in, I've chosen to do this side first because this side's my hardest side. This is the side that I find the hardest, and this is the reason why I use the mirror, because when you're on this side of the head, thanks John, when you're on this side of the head, your blade, you're going outwards, so it's very difficult for you to get the nice curve. So if I go around this way, I can actually, you know, get a nice arc with the shape. So I put that in quick. They would beg to differ. Quick. I'm not very quick. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let Kate explain what she's doing. What she's done. Alright. I'm going to tuck the head down now then.
You're doing a nice little part here, John.
Yeah? You like this bit?
Yeah. Best bit, isn't it?
Is this the bit that we enjoy the most? Now if you look in here, if you come a bit closer, what you'll see, look, is can you see how the hair actually sits outwards? So where this bit's starting to turn. Now, if I leave that on, what will happen is that when the head comes up, it'll basically hit the trapezius muscle and then it'll basically flick out. So what I'm going to do is I'm not so much going to do a point, because I find that the point grows out quite quick, but I've got my length here and I like this side, and this is pretty much the reason why I kind of left it. But I'm going to start to round this off here and I'm going to go up into that area there. I'm going to go here. Now, I'm using club cutting because that way then it's going to get rid of the length. Now, I'm working right into the growth pattern here, you know, right into the area where it could go wrong. Now I'm going to tilt the head up and go into the side. Gravity is now going to pull the hair down, so it's a little bit more into its natural fall. You can see where my length is kind of sitting behind the ear. And now this is, you know, it's quite fun. I'm just going to take the hair off.
I think a lot of people are scared, aren't they?
Yeah.
To go higher in the hair. And what would you do in a salon scenario? How would you communicate this with your customer?
Well, I mean, I was always taught that by Johnny that if you left it longer and it didn't work, then you just had to get rid of it. Now, in a salon scenario, this is like a fringe trim. You know, at Enna, we offer free fringe trims and we offer free neck hair, you know, and neck hair trims, and so it's just a nice way that, you know, that you can keep the fringe at a perfect length, or you can keep the outline looking nice and clean and sharp.
There's a question here, John, regarding
Yeah.
what you're doing now.
Yeah.
It's from Jay, and basically what he's saying is, would you ever use a clipper to do what you're doing now?
You could
if you
use.
would do, why, and what would be the benefits and the negatives?
You can use anything. You know, you could use the clipper if you wanted, but you know, if you imagine the clipper is quite flat, is quite square, and trying to arc that with an outline is quite difficult. So I find it easier just to use the tips of the scissors, and that create my curved shape. Now, so the answer is yeah, you could use this. You could use a clipper, but I prefer, and I've kind of trained myself, and with the team we've trained ourselves to use the scissors in a way that we can create curved lines using the points. You know, I again, Johnny explained on one of the weeks that if you use the clipper, it can kind of feel a little bit more aggressive. It can kind of grow out a little bit more aggressive, and so up now where the hairline is, I try to use. You know, I try to use my scissors as much as I can, because then it's going to feel a little bit softer. So I've just got that little piece just over the ear to go. And then I'm going to get rid of the hair quite quickly with the clipper which is sitting underneath. It's beautiful, Jill.
Very nice.
I'm sorry that I'm holding everybody up.
No problem. So, Kate, do you want to show everyone what we're doing over here?
So I'm just drawing Storm's haircut. I've put in my sections so far. So my first one was on the diagonal, so it mirrored the shape of the hairline, which gave me an even amount of hair within my first section, so it gave me a strong enough guide for working through the rest of the shape. Every section was cut on its base. This is we've got a little key. Okay, so section strong black line with an arrow on the end is showing my sections. The arrow shows the end of the section, and then the staggered red is direction of hair to the cutting line. Okay,
So how important is this, Kate? Is this important what you're doing now?
yeah, massively. If you can draw your haircut, it shows that you understand it. And it's difficult to draw. It's not easy.
It's a discipline, isn't it?
Yeah, time and patience and a million pieces of paper. You're a teacher or mentor circling every single little piece of line that went out of the head. People that have done courses with us know, well, in South Africa, me and Ped went. Every day we'd circle bits of little lines on their paper, but that's, if you've got the mentality that unless it's perfect, it's not good enough, then you'll just improve and improve.
I think our philosophy is that you need to be able to, most hairdressers can do it, you know, they understand the process of how to do it, but they don't necessarily know how to speak it. And if they do know how to speak it, they probably definitely don't know how to draw it, you know. So I think if you can do all three of them, you know, do it, speak it, draw it, you truly understand what it is that you're creating.
So every haircut with our staff training, every haircut they do, they have to document it. So write about what they learned about the haircut, how they cut it, the vertical shape, the horizontal shape, what key factors they used, and then they draw it. And then when they progress through their training, they look back at their first diagrams and they want to redraw them all because they've improved so much, but I don't let them. They just do it at home anyway.
There's a little thing just specifically for you, Kate.
Oh.
I hope I'm going to pronounce this right. Kalpesh.
Oh yeah, hello Kalpesh.
And his statement is this. Kate is hardcore about head sheets. Perfection is key. And then you've got George just above saying, Michaela reminds you of something. In other words, Georgia and Michaela and some of the other guys were here last week with us doing some diagram training. So they spent the whole day kind of breaking the
Drawing diagrams with Johnny.
Yeah. They loved it. It'd be fine. So I mean, how do you know when you're gonna draw, for example? How do you guys get it so fluid? How do you make it so clean and so precise?
Is it?
not you, Kate, but Kate, how do you get yours?
So for example, when I'm doing this, I've drawn it wrong. I've actually drawn it wrong.
There you go.
Why have I drawn it wrong? You can tell me I've drawn it wrong.
Oh, too short.
I didn't. I over-directed this hair. Getting carried away in the moment.
They're lost in the moment, us. John, that's looking incredible.
Okay, so a little tip is to start with, I'm just starting with the black, yeah, which are my sections. Okay, I'm getting all my sections in, and then I'm going to focus on my over direction and my cutting lines. Okay, so now I need to think about, let's think about my cutting shape. So if I think about that choice, my choice of length, be realistic with it as well. Try and visualise, okay, this is the shape of the head, okay? Think about the choice of length that I was doing when I cut the hair. So it's probably around there, and the angle was probably just slightly triangular, all right? And then from the front profile, when I was cutting this section, this section, think about the distance And again, choice of length, think about the angle, visualize it in your head. You know, it's almost like you're repeating everything that you did. You know, and that way, it's just, like Kate said, it's like you truly understand what it is that you're doing. What else is there? There's this choice of length in the back here. I would say it was about there. Alright, and I'm not going to draw it because I came through with them sections. So let's have a look at this. And then at the top zone here, choice of length was shorter at the back, longer at the front, and then this fringe area, the choice of length was probably about there. So you can see I've got a zone. I've got my zone here, which was the fringe. Yeah, which was this choice of length. My zone there, which is the triangle, and the zone there, which was the length at the back. And I've got my two choices there and that. So once I'm happy with that, then I can start to draw my direction of hair to the cutting line, and I can start to draw my internal over direction. But Kate's hogging the red pen.
So if we can bring the attention back to what John's doing now.
I'm just going to spray it, John. I'm just going to dress it with a little bit of hairspray.
So when is it done? Like, when do you finish? When is the haircut good enough?
Never. It's never good enough, is it?
No.
No. Because if it was, then you won't keep doing it, would you?
So what product are you using? Why are you using it?
I'm using the medium hold hairspray from Davines. I just want to add a little bit of shine. That's all, because it's basically I've combed it and combed it and combed it and combed it, and now it's just going to become a little bit static. So I just want to get a little bit of moisture in there, comb it down, make sure it's looking all nice and neat, making sure that I'm happy with it, which I'm fairly happy with it. Not too bad.
It's very beautiful.
Not too bad.
So guys, if you've got any last minute questions before we log off, feel free to ask me. The guys are just putting their finishing touches in. Pedro's just finishing his diagram here if you want to quickly just zoom into here and just check out the angles of the cutting lines and the over direction for those shapes. Now that he's got his red pen. You can see obviously here Pedro's showing the fact that he over directed all the sections to one specific area, hence why the shape got longer on one side. Okay. That's beautiful, Kate. It's gorgeous. Okay, so we're going to stand up all the girls next to each other for you to have a good look. Ted, do you want to quickly just recap on your haircut?
Yeah, okay, so started in the nape area, first zone, slightly triangular cutting line, quite close to being square, but just a little bit of length through there. Then started underneath from the front, worked vertical sections, over directing back to the previous, and just maintaining the external shape and the length shorter internally. Section through the top, we had a triangle through the top, and then a section combed out at the front to create the fringe. Worked sections through there, over directing everything to the first section, just to create really a lot of softness through the front, and then this little triangle of length that can either, you know, work left, right, act as a veil, you know, just externally afterwards, just really just kind of pointing. I didn't want to take the outline up too much to make it too strong. I still wanted to keep the feeling of softness throughout, but just enough so it would last. You know, after 3 or 4 weeks, she's got enough strength in there for it to last. Hope you like it.
Okay.
Okay, so we sectioned off centre parting, and then from the parting just out to the recession area, the base of the eyebrow for Storm's fringe. I used a square cutting line, so it just gradually gets a little bit longer and softer, working into the hair at the sides. And then I started at the front, working my internal shape first. Started with diagonal sections and pivoted to vertical sections. Sections 1 to 4 were cut on the base, and the cutting line was triangular, so shorter internally, longer externally, using my cutting line and my elevation. When I got to the top of the ear, which was my 4th section, every section working back to the centre of the head, which took me back to section 11, came forwards to section 4 and kept the same cutting line, so triangular, shorter internally, longer externally. Pushing that hair forward, so using cutting line elevation and over direction now in the horizontal shape, making it shorter at the front, getting longer towards the back. So vertically, triangular, shorter internally, longer externally, and horizontally, triangular, shorter at the front and longer at the back to keep some length towards the back.
Thank you. Thank you. And John?
Are you tall enough, Anne?
Just about.
Okay, cool. So I've worked with a natural side parting from the corner of the right eye, or on top of the right eye, working back to the crown. And from the centre crown, I took a section all the way down to the nape. From the nape, I took a diagonal vertical section. My cutting line was triangular, shorter externally, longer internally. And then my cutting by numbers was 2 to 1, 3 to 2, 4 to 3, 5 to 4, 6 to 5, 7 to 6. So building a lot more length and weight on the horizontal shape. So that would be triangular from the centre back all the way through around to the front hairline. Once I'd cut the back, 7 sections to the top of the ear, I came through the side. I don't know if you can remember, but I combed 2 sections down, no elevation, cut my line onto the cheekbone. Once I'd done that, I took sections 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, working back into the original horizontal shape that I created from the back. Okay? So the shape was horizontally triangular and vertically triangular. I did that on both sides. There you go, turn it around, pull the head down. Obviously I went through, blow dried it all, cross-checked it, and I put my outlines in right at the end, alright?
Beautiful. Thank you, John. And Maddie?
Yes, so...
Haircut by Christopher Brooker last week.
So I explained the haircut, so gorgeous haircut by Christopher last week, and then on Melody's hair, I just wanted to play with a little bit of subtle highlighting to accentuate the gorgeous lengths we've got around the face here, and then just to add a little bit of texture like Christopher was explaining last week in his video through the top section here. So we just used a level 9 double ash and a 12 extra lift or high lift with a ash violet tone. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. So, thank you very much for tuning in. We hope you've enjoyed our Facebook Unplugged, Allilon Unplugged number 7. Please thank you to the Allilon team and our models for giving up their time. We hope you've enjoyed it. And we'll see you next week. Have a good day. Bye.